Hello, and welcome to Realign Journey, the unfiltered guide to self-discovery and reconnection. I'm Sierra Sambrowski, your host, and together we'll deep dive the topics that have caused us to lose touch with ourselves and explore ways to reconnect to our true self. This week, I am joined by Kristine Bell. Kristine is a customer strategist and researcher who helps entrepreneurs, startups, and small businesses build successful and sustainable businesses by developing a powerful customer strategy that aligns and unifies their offer and marketing to customer needs and wants. Kristine has a ton of experience in working with large, notable companies and brands, though her real passion is working with small businesses. No matter who it is that she works with, she helps them gain rich insights into their target groups and identify real opportunities to build meaningful, lasting customer relationships and convert more sales with ease. Hello, Kristine. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And what a beautiful way to introduce me. I don't think I could do my pitch as well as you did.
Well, it was really your words. I just, fixed them up a little bit, especially since you and I have had an opportunity to connect before this. So I got to know you a little bit more and learn more about what you do. But today we're going to be talking about core values and authenticity. And so I know before we started this recording, you mentioned about authenticity is quite the buzzword. Everybody's using it. And yet it seems like it's a buzzword, like that people are forcing themselves to find authenticity, right?
Right, exactly. So, in the world of marketing, which is where I spend a lot of time, it's definitely become the word. Yeah, everyone talks about being authentic, in terms of who they are, in terms of the offer. And I'm like, well, what does that actually mean? As much as I love authenticity, I think we have to go a little bit deeper with that, because otherwise it just becomes another marketing word and it loses its impact and it loses its meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually such an important concept, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And so I think the question then begs is how does a person even begin to find authenticity for themselves? Because a lot of people
Right.
are so disconnected from themselves. And then if you are a business owner, to ask you to show up in an authentic way in your business, but you don't know who you are authentically, or you've not allowed yourself that space, how would you how do you work with your clients? I know you've been on a personal spiritual journey, growth, healing journey for yourself. I'm sure that was a big part of that. Where do you think you've been able to tap into your real authenticity?
So it's a big question, isn't it? But
Mm-hmm.
basically, 8 years ago, I burned out and I didn't even know that I suffered from burnout. That's how little I knew myself. I didn't even
Mm.
know what it was and that I actually suffered from it. And I had no clue, because my history is I've spent my whole life trying to be what other people wanted me to be. So I would feel safe and I would be feeling that I was included and not be excluded or rejected.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that happens in childhood at an early age. And this is how far back I believe it goes when we lose our authenticity or lose our ability to actually connect and allow and accept who we really are, because we're brought up in a world where we are impacted by everyone, including our family, and we try and survive as children. Yeah, so we become what people want to be, and some people more than others. And I was definitely one of those people who were all about being liked, being popular, not be excluded. And that meant I had to give up on myself. So I
Mm-hmm.
think if we go back to where we lose it, because this comes back to who we really are at our deepest core,
Mm-hmm.
including our values. But if we don't even know our values and we've lost who we are and we don't even want to own ourselves, then that's the journey of becoming unauthentic, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now
Right.
suddenly we grow up and we're now in a business world, if we are running our own business, and we realize that with AI and everything else that's going on in the world, authenticity is what everyone wants. Yeah. And it sounds great. We all want authentic relationships. We want deeper connections. That sounds great. But that requires us to be actually able to connect to ourselves and know our deeper self. And not only know it, but to allow it to come through. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires belief in yourself. It requires you to really trust yourself, and it requires you to know yourself, and it requires you to accept yourself. Ultimately, it requires self-love.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still on that journey of self-love. That is not we start here and now we reach the destination and everything is great. Yeah,
Right,
that's a
right.
lifelong learning. And so I think I've lost the question somewhere potentially. So just bring me back if
That's
I've lost
okay.
it. But for me, authenticity starts by really getting to know yourself. And it also starts with accepting who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to release the need for validations of others.
Mm-hmm.
And I must admit, as a small business, as you know, and who I am, I love a great compliment. Don't get me wrong. But do I need it? Or am I good enough in myself? Do I know myself well enough to honor who I am? And this is exactly where I am in my spiritual journey right now. Really letting go of needing the outside validation, as nice as it is to get compliments, and to go, okay, I don't need the world to show me I'm good enough or successful enough. And surely enough, the life will always show you where you're at and what you need to grow in next. And that's been one of my biggest growth lessons. And it has shown up in terms of actually taking away all the things that make me feel good. Yeah. The things that made me feel good enough and felt like I fitted in. They have literally, the universe, if you call it that, or whatever, what you call it, have literally taken it away from me in the last year and has forced me into really sitting with myself and accepting myself. And it's a journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I can relate to that also, because I think when we grow in our own healing and in our own spiritual journey, there gets to be this point where you really have to start to shed, like the universe will force you to shed anything that you are using from the outside world to kind of prop you up and make yourself feel validated. Because you hit this point, I think anyway, you hit this point where you are being begged, not called. It starts as a call and then it turns into begging. And then they basically kick your ass and tell you, you will not validate yourself with outside things anymore. So if we're far enough along in that cycle, and if we're growth oriented, then this is something that does happen, and it will strip you of all those things that you used to equate to your value and that used to make you feel validated as a worthy adult contributor to society, what have you, in your
100%. 100%. And I can even feel it deep inside when you spoke those words. And to give a really practical example on what that looks like, and it may look different to the listeners because we all have our different things that we have used to validate ourselves. But for me, it's money. I grew up in a family where, well, even though I grew up in Denmark, which actually isn't that money orientated per se as a culture, but I grew up still, and I think in most Western worlds at least, I grew up with thinking that if I just make enough money, or if I have the title and the education, then I'm going to be good enough. And last year has literally stripped away everything in terms of finances. And I am on a big reset. And you could easily go with my, using, because I've been using this to validate myself for so long without even thinking about it. You could easily go, oh my goodness, I'm not good enough. I have to quit my business. I have to go back to just being who I was and fit in and don't think too big of myself. This is a typical Danish thing, tall puppy syndrome. But I have gone with it in terms of the universe has literally not allowed me to go back to another job. If I try to apply for it, no answer. It has literally made me sit with it. There has been no escape. And I think that's the hard part when we go on this journey, is there will come a point where we're so ready for it that the universe will no longer let us escape back to our old ways.
I agree. And that certainly was my personal experience also. So I 100% relate to that. I think that not everybody has to let it go down the path where it completely kicks your ass. I think that there are ways that if you can recognize better, I'm a bit stubborn. So, and I think we've talked about this. I think you have a little stubborn streak in you also. And so people are like, well, you have, this ability to be able to tune in and get messages and all this. Don't you get them for yourself? I do. And I usually fight them if I feel like that's not really the way I want that to look. Um, so I was the same in that it completely stripped me, financially. It forced me to move. No matter how many jobs I applied for, I mean, I was applying for things that I was qualified for, down to a seasonal help at the mall, a barista at Starbucks, and I wasn't even getting a call. And I had sent out hundreds of resumes. So yeah, it was incredibly painful because I lost everything. And at the same time, once you come out of it, you're like, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Because all of a sudden, I really am authentic. And all of a sudden, I really am like, well, I've been to the bottom. So what the hell can happen now? I might as well go with where I'm at.
Right. And it takes away this fear, because it turns out a lot of us, so I'm not saying all businesses are like this, but for me at least, there has been this underlying fear and anxiety that's kind of kept me there, in terms of the bring money in and then lose the money, bring it in, lose it, because I wasn't able to stand in it in terms of owning myself and really accepting myself and allowing it in. So that was also stopping me. So I'm totally with you to the point of I've literally accepted that trying to get a job that I do not want, that does not resonate with me, that doesn't feel aligned with me, is a waste of time, and it's driven by fear, or to make anyone in my life feel comfortable that I'm doing something at least,
Yes.
To change the situation. But like you said, there comes a point where suddenly you go, at least for me, the things I used to value, really, I couldn't care less anymore. It's quite interesting in terms of the material stuff. It doesn't mean I don't like a nice trip or something like that. But having, a certain amount of new clothes every month, couldn't care less, There's so many things that are just like, it doesn't matter what is important to me, and it comes back to my values. And it has taught me what's actually really, really important to me, which is actually my business and expressing myself fully, which is what I am driven by. And my business allows me to do this. So it's given me more, as funny as enough, as hard as it's been, it's also given me more certainty and confidence in myself and what I'm doing.
Yeah. And I think, and I want to touch on the core values stuff then, but I think that a big part of what's missed in sort of this buzzword version of authenticity is that real authenticity comes from owning all those ugly parts. It comes from saying, I was afraid. It comes from saying, I failed. It comes from saying, I lost all my money and I've not been able to do this. And yeah, you know what? I really was allowing myself to find my own value in whether or not people thought I was being a successful professional or not, whether I was living up to the ideal of having this career, because those parts are ugly and we don't talk about them because usually we feel shame or guilt around them. But I think this whole movement around authenticity misses the fact that you have to own them first and foremost.
That's the only thing that matters. Who cares actually if other people think you're authentic or not? What really matters is how you feel about yourself. And do you wake up going, I feel good in myself, even if things aren't looking that great on the outside, but still inside, deep inside, do you feel that you're good enough? Do you honestly realize, and I'm just clicking this myself now, so it's been 8 years of personal development and many, many, many more years not knowing anything about this, But do you really realize that when you were born in, you were good enough just as you were, and everything else has come from outside to form your opinion. So no wonder we live in fear, because most people in this world, unfortunately, are in fear. And the last few years have put more people into fear than ever before, because it makes us need others, yeah? And the beauty about being truly authentic when you get there, and it's a journey, yes? So I'm not saying I'm 100% there.
Yeah.
But what I can see now is this thing of, hold on, I see through the veil of fear, and I choose to stay connected to myself regardless of the things that do scare me, because let's not forget that things can still scare us. But I have me, and I'm good enough, whether I live on the street, not that I want to live on the street, but the person on the street is just as good enough in themselves. They just don't know it. Yeah. And that's usually the big thing. I don't want to go too much into homelessness. I live in an area where there's lots of them. So I end up speaking a lot to them because of my dog, who everyone loves. And it's one of those things you realize there's these people who can't even look you in the eyes because they feel so shamed and about themselves, and they've lost themselves somewhere. And that's the whole thing for all of us. It's coming back to being who we are regardless of what happens in the outside world, and not knowing, being okay to not know what's next.
Yeah, because I think so many of us put on these masks. Like I said, there's this big thing about being authentic, but I feel like it's pushing more and more people to create a false sense of authenticity than really digging in and being truly authentic. And yet there are people that when they're doing that are, in a metaphoric way, afraid to look you in the eye. It really is a lack of confidence, a lack of self-worth and self-love, that you won't own those parts of yourself that are afraid, that haven't always done it right, and that in particular feel lost. Because I think, especially as business owners, we often don't want to be seen as somebody that doesn't have the plan, that doesn't have the answers, that doesn't know what to do, let alone who we really are.
Yeah. And especially when you're starting a small business as well, you want to see them as you got it together, you're successful, you're everything they need, because you're selling yourself, especially if you're a service business. And you want to contribute to the world. You want to be everything to everyone else. But the big thing here is you need to be everything for yourself first.
So that's a great
everything to everyone else.
Right. Oh, there was a little delay there, so I cut you off. I'm sorry. I was going to say that's a great lead in to the core values conversation, though. And I know it's been coming up for me in my work with other people. I had somebody in their human design who had, as part of their incarnation, the gate of values. And so it's real important that that particular business owner, not only for their personal self, but also for their business, is very clear about the values that are most important to them. And this whole piece of not knowing ourselves and losing ourselves and becoming unauthentic as we grow and mature through life, I think that's probably one of the best ways for you to really start looking at things and looking at where your life may be out of alignment. And then, where am I out of alignment with myself? Where is my business out of alignment with who I am and what's important to me? Right?
100%. And I think with our values is, once we are able to identify or recognize our true values, and I do believe our values can change and evolve over time. I don't think they are static, but if we can understand what our core values are and act on them, this is where authenticity comes through in business as well. And in our personal life, it's not just that we know them, it's that we actually act on them consistently. So that's when authenticity comes through. And it's also where we find the confidence, I think, because once we have those values, which actually help guide us, they're there to help us guide ourselves to not stray too far off the off away to who, away from who we actually are, and keep us aligned with ourselves, like you said, both in ourselves and in our business. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to understand my true values has been really, really important. I knew some of them because it's who I am, and usually it's what's gotten me in trouble sometimes too, when people haven't liked it. Yeah. And I couldn't help myself. Often it's the ones where we just can't help ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's who we are. Mine is honesty. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had to learn to probably modify that honesty over the years, but it's who I am. I speak the truth.
Mm-hmm.
My truth, at least. I know
Mm-hmm.
truth is also, a subjective thing, but for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's speaking my truth. So that's a key value of mine, and I have to stick to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that understanding where your values are and what those core values are, and you'll have to share. I typically, when I do it, I've done it for myself before. And so I agree 100% that they do evolve. Maybe 3 or maybe even 4 at times have stayed the same. But it's a really great place, I think, for people to be able to use it when they are unsure, when you need to use some sort of discernment, like determine, is this really what's in my highest and best interest, or am I being selfish? That's in quotes for those that can't see me. Because, that's certainly one of the things that we carry once we start setting boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if you keep those core values top of mind, like literally keep a list of them to be able to see them all the time, it helps you when you need to set a boundary, when you're saying, am I just being spiteful, or is this really holding a boundary against somebody? Am I just doing this for the wrong reason or the right reason? To be able to use it for decision making and discernment and boundaries was a big thing for me. But I needed to know what those core values were so that I could start to learn who I really was and what I really wanted, because I came to find out I didn't really know. So
Yeah, and I've been on the same journey as you with that. And I've actually last year had someone help me, because sometimes it's good to get help here too, yeah, and support. And I had someone help me dig deep on a spiritual level as well, and in my business as well, and go, okay, what actually are my values?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, once we know our values, it's actually it's such a support, because it allows us to have discernment, and it allows us to make choices based on who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
And once we do that, we don't have to convince others. Say if we're in business and we're trying to sell and make money, we don't have to convince others of our authenticity, because our values and the way we behave based on our values is what people experience.
Right.
And therefore, and if we are aligned with them authentically, it's our true values, then we will automatically come across as more authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And there is this energetic resonance. Authenticity, when it's real, is very, very desirable. It's something that brings in the right people quite naturally, energetically.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and I met on a networking event. We had a 5-minute chat, and there was already a meeting of, I think, values probably.
Probably.
Somewhere, even if we didn't know it. And that brought us together. And therefore, has been an ease and a flow between us the whole time, which is the power of being authentic by knowing your true values in your life and in your business. You start to bring in the right people more and more. And you definitely start to discern which ones are not the ones you're meant to work with. You might sometimes still do it because you want the money,
right?
But then you also,
then you're compromising your values, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then that's a learning in itself too, yeah?
Sure. Absolutely. It absolutely is. It's the kind where you go, damn it, I knew better than that.
Exactly. Exactly.
I knew straight from the start that person wasn't going to be a good fit for me. Now I'm in it. And you will learn it becomes much easier than the next time around to say no when the unideal client shows up, even if you want the money or need the money.
Exactly. Because usually what happens is it will usually, if you're at a certain level in your spiritual development and coming home to yourself, at some point choosing the ones who we know don't resonate with us, who we know don't fit our values, will bite us in the bum, whether it's through delays, through difficult conversations, through things just going wrong, through betrayal. Something will happen that will teach you at some point to make sure you always choose to work with the people you align with, and don't bother doing the other thing anymore. It's gonna bite you in the bum.
And the reality of the situation is that we framed it up around business today, but it is also 100% true for our personal lives. It is
100%.
absolutely works just as well for anyone that is looking to find romantic relationship, just looking to have different connections, a different circle of friends, looking to create healthier relationships with our families. Like, all of this is absolutely translatable across all the areas of our lives.
100%. And if you want to do an exercise,
yes,
most of us at some point have had a partner, that we probably didn't match with at all. So go back to those relationships that were difficult, or hurt you, or broke your heart, and then just look back at who you were in that relationships, and then match it with your values. Were you actually acting out of your values, and did that person match your values? Because they probably didn't.
Yeah, they probably didn't.
So if you ever had a partner that was unfaithful and betrayed you, there's a good chance that you probably valued integrity and honesty more than they did. And that they'd value something else more than staying faithful.
Yeah. It actually, and I know this is not you or I's particular area of specialty, but it does beg the question then, do you think that identifying core values and matching them with somebody before you move forward in a more in-depth relationship is a good practice to maybe do?
I think so. So I'll tell you a little personal story. I actually met my husband 13 years ago on one of those apps, one of those dating apps. This is when it was back when it was still quite new. And the good things about it, as much as it feels like a meat market, these apps, the good thing is you do get a chance to really figure out yourself in terms of when you put your profile up, what are your values, what's important to you, and be honest, because otherwise you're going to attract something that doesn't match you. And two, you start to be able, once you get clear on your values, you'll start to be able to look at other people's profile, and you'll start to be able, not 100%, but you'll start to be able to see through where does what they say match the energy and what they're actually about. Is a disconnect, and that's something we learn to feel into. The more we get clear on ourselves, you learn, I think, automatically to also notice others, whether they feel like they are matching their own values or not.
I mean, and I was gonna say it's interesting because I think about this as I'm listening to you talk, and we're talking about the romantic relationship and the dating apps, and so I actually had met my partner also on an online site almost 20 years ago. It's been a long time, 17 years ago. But
so you're what we call an early adopter of the dating
it was
apps,
very uncomfortable.
I thought I was early, but you would have been earlier.
That's because my therapist told me to do it. I had been divorced. That's a whole nother story for another show. But it was my therapist. I got married very young. I'd been married for 10 years. So here I was at, 30 years old. And I I had never really dated as an adult. And so when we both felt like I was ready to start dating, she was like, I think you have to do this. Like, I really think that's what you should do. So that's what I did. But you know, even still today, I have a lot of single girlfriends, and a lot of them do that and use that. And I always think about that, but I wasn't thinking it in this exact frame of reference that you just kind of framed it up in that, like, because I'm always like, who cares? Like, be honest. Don't be playing all nice with them on these dates. Like, I'm not saying that doesn't mean you go in like a battle axe about it and like, I want to know this. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying don't water yourself down, because if they can't handle you on date, the real you on one or two, then where the hell do you think this is going? But you're right. I think even set it up in the profile. I think so many people, again, this goes back to that conversation about looking for that outside validation, to feel like we're included, we're not alone, you know, that people like us, that we have value. But set it up even initially in the profile. Be real clear about what your values are. And then the key is, though, you have to get comfortable with no one reaching out to you, with no one liking you or responding to you.
I know, right? Rejection is a bitch, but it's a good learning.
Right. And the truth of the matter is that then you don't get people that are misaligned with you. Like, it may feel very lonely and like you're just in this vacuum of rejection because nobody's liking you or sending you a message or whatever the platform calls for. But the reality of the situation is that it means that no one that's lined up with you has come. And isn't that better in the long run? In some ways.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you're just going to go through the same experience again. Universe will let you, if you're a little bit stubborn like you and I, universe will give you the same lesson in different variations again and again until you get it. So it's not like if you do it wrong, don't worry, you'll get another chance to get it right. Yeah. But what we're saying is you could start, if you're up for it, start by really getting clear on yourself. By getting comfortable with being alone, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, that's the number one for being authentic, is you gotta be okay with being alone in yourself, whether it's in relationships or in business as well. Yeah. There's no fun in being rejected in business either, but it happens. Yeah.
All the time. And again, I think that's another great thing. I kind of did this, going back to myself, I did this in reverse. So when I went back into dating, I had such a terrible time being confident and being myself, and really knowing my value in personal relationships. And that wasn't just romantic. It showed up in my family and my friendships, everything at the time. But I was way better at it business-wise. In my career, in my business, I could go in and negotiate, and I would hold a line and like, no, this is what I want. And, you know, no, this is what we need to do. And I could stand my ground and be really strong about who I was and what I needed and what I wanted. So I would try and apply the business principles over to my dating. Like, I would be like, think of this as like a business pitch, you know, think of this as don't let yourself be nervous. They either like you or they don't. They either need you or they don't. They either want you or they don't. Like, and so I had to like psych myself up that way. But I think that there's real value in turning it back the other way too, and saying, what if we apply those same ideas to our business that we just talked about, applying them to dating, right? Like, be real clear about your values, be authentic up front, and you have to get okay and comfortable with people and potential clients and customers passing you by.
Yes. And you know what here is as well, coming back, because I was just thinking the same, you can apply the whole dating to business as well. And here's the one thing I've seen, I don't know what it's like in America, I imagine it might be the same. And I'm hearing this from friends, so it's not me personally, because I did meet my husband and it's a fantastic relationship. But I've heard with some of those apps like Tinder or whatever, you know, it's become this place where, you know, you're expected to make out on the first night. Yeah. And
I don't know. I'm out of that game. I'm like looking at you with wide eyes. Like, are you?
Who should I? who should, yeah, well, some of them in different Australia is like, I've heard from friends, it's like literally like, who should I meet up with in the next couple of hours? Yeah.
Oh God.
For more than just a hello. And this is what I'm saying, it's kind of a little bit like that sometimes with business too, especially if you're on social media, how many people you connect with that you don't know. Next thing you know, within 5 minutes, I get this full on direct message about buy my product. Yeah.
Oh,
And
I
it's
was
like,
just
well,
talking about that today.
hold on. Let's go back to dating principles. And this comes back to when these apps as well, or when we meet someone. Why don't we go back to dating? So instead of thinking you're meeting your next man or woman or whoever, or you are meeting your next client right now, how about we go back to just getting to know each other first?
Mm-hmm.
And just step back a little bit before we pitch anyone, whether it's personally or in business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just step back and let people get to know each other. So when I was doing the app, I actually thought it was really nice for just meet and greet. I thought of it as a way to have a meet and greet. That's all I thought of it. I did not necessarily believe I was going to meet someone. Yeah. But it was a great way to, because I was fairly new to Australia still and I didn't grow up in Australia, so I didn't have a lot of context, so to speak. Yeah. So for me, it was a really great way to meet people, potential partners, potentially, or friends, or someone I would never see again, to learn about myself. But it was a good way to just step back and say, let's just stop, get to know each other, take it slow. And I think the same applies in business as well, because this allows us to, one, get clear on ourselves, but also get to know the other person and what actually are their values. Yeah. Because they can give you a song and a dance, and they can look very shiny on their first night, including clients and potential partners. But give them a month, are they still as shiny?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think that's 100% correct. I think that if nobody takes anything else away from this conversation we're having, Kristine, please let it be that whether you're looking for relationships or client business customers, put your values out there, be strong in them, be clear in them, hold them, and give time to see if the other person really has the same values or compatible values with them.
Yeah.
Because that's the key, I think, right there.
Yeah. And your values, especially if you're a service business, your values are a key part of your brand positioning and key part of your brand identity. Yeah. Especially if you're a small business or service business. The big business, you've got a whole organization and it requires everyone to adhere to them, which is much harder to do than it is to say. Yeah. But if you're a small business, product or service, but especially if you're a service business where you are the IP, you are the face of your offer and your brand, then your values are key to connecting with the right customers.
Yeah. And I go back to the fact that you have to know what your personal ones are first, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have a small team or whether you're leading 100 people. At the end of the day, you're leading. That company is a direct extension of you. And so you have to know your core values and be authentic with yourself and in yourself first and foremost before that can translate.
That's such a good point. And your employees will thank you for it. They may not agree with all your values, but they will thank you because that means that you are consistent. They know what they got with you. They're not going to be confused or uncertain. Is this person going to show up one way this today, but tomorrow she or he is going to yell at me? So values allows employees and staff to feel safe, to feel that they know what the rules are, to know how things work. And it allows them to find their best self and find their safety within the company and with you as a leader. So that means it's a lot easier for them to communicate with you and for you to communicate with them because we both know where we're standing. Yeah.
And again, that's also true in personal relationships.
And in business.
Yeah. I was going to say it's the same. It's funny how much parallel the same key principles are there no matter what aspect you're trying to grow and build in your life for yourself. It comes down to the exact same things, no matter which arena we're in.
Absolutely. And sometimes we have to walk away, and that's hard. It's really, really hard if it's a family member or someone we care about or a client. Yeah. But understanding our values makes it a little bit easier because we are in resonance with who we are. So we're not going to have as much, should I have done that? Or was that the right thing? Oh my God, I'm regretting this now. There will be less regret. Even when it's hard and it hurts, there will be less regret because you're being true to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes back to the point that I had made earlier about like, it becomes this really great framework for you to bounce everything in your life off of, every decision, all the discernment, all the boundaries that you need to set. You can say like, yeah, but I stayed true to myself, but I stayed true to myself, but I stayed true to myself. And you can always use it as an excuse then, if you're really that clear and that consistent with always following your boundary, your values, then when it does come time to have those hard conversations and maybe you have to quit or fire someone, right? You can always be like, listen, at the end of the day, this violates my values, or our values do not align. And so it kind of comes like a built-in excuse if you need it to prop you up too.
And it takes away a little bit of the personal pain or the stint that comes from when you being fired. Because you go, okay, it's not me who's done something wrong. It's just that they don't appreciate what I'm about. But my values are still valuable.
Absolutely.
This is who I am. But we can take out a little bit. It is personal, but we can still take it out as in terms of the pain of that, because we know who we are and we trust who we are. And that means there are other people out there where their relationships or business, if someone doesn't match, doesn't mean there aren't other people who are going to match with you. You're not going to be alone forever unless you choose to. It will allow more room for more people to come in business or relationships, personal relationships, who actually match you a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you look back at why that relationship went south, even if it's like you're an employee and you got fired, you will, if you're really honest with yourself, I'd almost bet 100% of the time you made that decision to take that job or get into that relationship out of some place of fear, out of some place that was out of alignment for you. And that's why it didn't work.
In 2011, I quit a job because I was already burned out there, and I had some toxic environments I was working in, which was my lesson in life that I wasn't listening to for a long time in terms of why I was keep attracting that. And then I got into fear, and I took another job, and they offered me great money, and they offered me a lot of perks. And as I was signing it, I knew in my heart of heart that this was not the right thing for me to do. And there was a part of me that wished that they hadn't offered me the job, because that way I could explain to my parents why I didn't take it. But I took it. And then, of course, the honeymoon is kind of sweet for a while, but the honeymoon always ends. Just a matter of how fast it ends. And then it was like, what do I do now? Because I can't just leave. That's going to look back on my resume. It's going to look back. I stayed 3 years just because I didn't want it to look back bad on my resume. 3 years in hell of people that were just toxic. Not all of them, but there was leadership that was toxic, and they were nasty. Some of them, nasty. Just a matter of who they came for. It wasn't me for a while, but eventually it will turn on you as well. And I still stayed just because out of fear, and out of what was going to look like, what was going to say about me and my resume.
And now you're like, man, I wish I wouldn't have cared so much about what was on my resume.
Exactly. But it's a learning experience. And what it did teach me after that, when I did walk out one day, was that I knew I couldn't go back to it, and that I had to look at myself now. I finally had to sit down and look at myself and get honest with myself and get to know myself, and then rebuild completely from the from start.
So share with people if you have sort of an exercise or something that you like to do for yourself, like at that time when you were rebuilding. Did you do something? How did you help to define what your core values were?
But one thing I did do was I did get help. I think
Therapy.
depending on where you are at
Mm-hmm.
in your journey and how much you've lost yourself, and I had lost myself a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I actually read Brene Brown's books. At
Mm-hmm.
that time, I didn't know her, but somehow they came into my life at that time, and they resonated with me. And she talked about having a therapist. So I thought, you know what? I need someone to help me.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get help, and was all of the help exactly what I want, the best? No, it wasn't, but that's a
Mm-hmm.
learning experience too. But it took me on this journey of reaching out to others that I felt a connection with that could help me. So I'd say number one, if you need it, don't be afraid or ashamed to get help. It is
Mm-hmm.
important to do that to get to know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, in terms of the exercise for my values, I also actually got help recently with that, because yes, I had my ideas, but then someone said, let's just look at your values again at a very deep level. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this exercise of actually, there's a lot of meditation, I'll be honest with you,
Yeah.
that went
Yeah.
into it. There was a lot of sitting still, there was a lot of journaling, and there was a lot of drawing. I'm not saying that's the right thing for your listeners. I
Right.
think we all have to find what best allows us to find peace in ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and find stillness.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, for me, it was much more of intuitive writing, listening into what I felt came through,
Mm-hmm.
and then intuitively writing down those values,
Mm-hmm.
and then really sitting with them in terms of which ones more important to me,
Mm-hmm.
and also looking at myself in terms of might sound like a good value, but is it really what I am? So I also went back to how do that value actually come to life right now in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and that gave me some sense of whether it really was true to me, or whether it was something that wasn't true, or whether it's something that just needed to be developed more because it was there, but it'd been so pushed back
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that I ignored it. So that's what I've done. I don't know if that helps, but it's not a clean little
Yeah.
boom, 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 here it came. It
Yeah.
was a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think that's really great. And I think that there's a lot of ways that anybody, even if they're not good meditators or that doesn't appeal to them, um, can just start kind of free flowing, like you said, and like just start about one word that really means the most to you, that you just value the most in people you do business with, the relationships you have, and what your most like highest and best version of yourself is 100% committed to. And if you just kind of start pouring that out, yeah, and I think boil it down into, like I said, I usually work with 5. I don't know how many you do 5 also.
Well, usually I come up with more, and then people are saying,
Yeah.
no, we got to boil it down to,
Yeah.
5, because really it's hard to act on 10. Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
honest, there'd be
Yeah.
like 3 to 5, I would say, that we are consistently able to act on. So if we can get clear on those 3 to 5, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, because that's the same thing. Like even when I did it with a client the other day, like I had come up with a list for this person to be able to look at so that they had some like ideas, because not everybody's great at being able to just sit with yourself and know some things. But yeah, it becomes a big list, and which ones do you identify that are most important to you? And then maybe there's 10 or 12 or 20 even, and just keep narrowing them down. Okay, compared to these, when you line these two up, which one's more important?
And it is hard. So another little thing you can do as well that I have worked with is go back to the relationships in life or in business that were really, really hard, as well as ones that were really, really easy. And then just look back at those relationships in terms of when they were hard and it was difficult. What were you doing action? What was the actual actions you were taking at the times? And behind those actions, what was the value that was driving those actions? and look at the other person. Always, you obviously don't know the other person, but look at how they are behaving and what that suggests about their values, because that's where the mismatch is. So we now know, okay, this definitely there's a mismatch in terms of how they behaved and what seems to be their values and me. So that gives us a bit of insights into ourselves, also to them, but mostly about ourselves. And the same when things are really easy. What is it in the behavior or in the action that makes it really, really easy in terms of how they behave and how you behave? Because, values are words on paper until we actually act them out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really a great point. Or I would even go as far as to say, like, if there's certain characteristics in like a coworker or a cousin or somebody else in your life that you have to have interaction with, but that drives you absolutely freaking nuts. Think about what characteristic it is in them that makes you so crazy, and then make that parallel between what's the positive version of that, because that's probably a real strong core value for you.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So there's it's not like a easy, let's sit down and boom, here are my values. Yeah. It takes a little bit more, it takes time to get really deep with yourself. And once we have them though, that is where it becomes a lot easier to be authentic.
Yeah.
And consistently be authentic, because it's who we are.
Yeah. I think it's a great compass, like I said, for everything. It's kind of your backboard for everything. Kristine, this conversation has been so good. I can't wait. I'm sure we're going to come up with another conversation to have so we can do this again. Tell everyone, though, a little bit about how they might be able to work with you. If you sound like somebody that aligns with them, where can they connect with you? How can they follow you? What do you have to offer?
Wonderful. So I'm all about, for small businesses at least, I'm all about co-creation. Yeah. I believe that we co-create together. It's not about me giving people answers. It's not about them having all the answers. But when we co-create together, using some exercises that allows us to think about our strategy in business, our customer strategy in business and marketing strategy, then we're going to get so really exciting results, because we are co-creating it, and it's energy that comes into it that allows us to think outside the box and think bigger. So that's what I'm all about, and it's all about co-creating that strategy for your unique value proposition, understanding your target market at a deep level in terms of their motivations, their emotional needs and wants, so we can really align with them in an authentic way. And that makes the energy flow much easier. And we look at the values as well of you and your business and your target market to match it as well authentically. So this is what I'm all about. And where I'm spending most of my time is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So I find it hard as a one-man band to be on all social media equally well. So most of my time is spent on LinkedIn. So you can find me there, Kristine Bell with a K. You can find me there. I also, well, that's probably the best way to find me, to reach out to me, to be honest. I am on Facebook as well. I'm also on Instagram, Kristine Bell Customer Strategy.
Oh, okay.
But that's a new one, but you can at least find me there. So that's probably the best place to find me.
Okay.
And I also have a website, but I don't use that as much. I need to update it.
Okay.
Well, then we will put that out there. Inside.
I know that. I think your name is great. You're going to have to Yeah, I think
Insights and strategy.
Yeah, I think you need to update that. It's a good name.
Yes, I do. It all costs money and time. Yeah. So
yes, it's all about the resources. It is, for sure. Well,
and I definitely think, there's so many places to put ourselves out there. So we just got to decide what's more important right now, and then make sure that the strategy is aligned across all our executions, because that's where we get impact.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
I hope that's enough to reach out for me and find me. LinkedIn is where you're going to find me. I'm very busy on there every day.
Yeah. And I'll have the correct spelling for your name and stuff in the show notes. So when people go and find that, if you're unsure of how to spell her name exactly, it'll be in the show notes. But again, thank you so much for being here. Sojourners, thank you so much for listening again this week. We hope that you found some really great nuggets to take along with you, and that you'll join us again next week. You can always like, follow, subscribe, Realign Journey on the multiple platforms that are on the episode cover. So please join us again. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me.